Jonah Vex didn't mind the smell anymore. 9 years in the waste shafts of Galactic Concord Station dulled a man's senses. The acidic bite of Corlaxian bile, the fermented sweetness of Glythenian fruit rinds, even the steady drip of unknown fluids from the overhead tubes, all of it had faded into background noise. He walked the narrow passage with his cart creaking behind him, boots scuffing the stained grating. Low light flickered from maintenance bulbs overhead, casting brief glints off the sweat on his brow. The station's core vents hissed nearby, constant, rhythmic, mechanical breathing. Jonah paused, setting the cart's brake. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a dented lunch container. Inside, mashed tubers and seasoned soy meat, half-eaten, but still warm. He stared at it for a second, then sighed and crouched near the vent. Same spot as yesterday. "Hey," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "You down there?" No answer. Just the soft whir of air circulation. He leaned closer. "I left food yesterday. You didn't touch it." A flicker, a movement just past the edge of shadow. Jonah held still. From beneath the grate, two silver eyes blinked. There she was again. Skin like ash, limbs too thin for her frame. Her head was wrapped in a cloth, probably torn from a standard-issue diplomatic robe. She said nothing, as usual. Just watched him. Wary. Tense. Jonah nudged the food forward. Still warm. No bugs. No poison. Go ahead. The girl crept forward on all fours, slowly, like a creature half-wild. She took the container with trembling hands and retreated without a sound. Jonah didn't move. "Eat slow," he said. "Stomach's not ready for rush meals if you've been starving." Still nothing. He stood, brushing grime off his uniform. "I'll be back this time tomorrow. I don't ask questions. But you should know, station cameras don't cover this corner. You're safe here. For now." As he turned to go, he heard it, a faint scrape, metal against metal. He looked back. She was bowing. A full, formal bow, forehead nearly touching the ground. Then she vanished behind the vent grill. Jonah stared for a moment, unsettled. It wasn't the gesture itself. It was how she did it, deliberate, rehearsed, almost ritualistic. Strange. He didn't sleep much that night. The next day brought the same routine, cleaning up after ambassadors, flushing out alien molds from coolant systems, scrubbing down corridors that had seen too many boots and too little gratitude. But Jonah's thoughts kept circling back to the girl and the ducks. Was she an escaped servant? A stowaway? A runaway from one of the noble houses? He'd seen all types on Concord Station. Desperate, broken people. The galaxy was too big and too cruel to catch every fallen soul. Still, there was something about her, something he couldn't place. That evening, he brought fresh bread and broth. She appeared again, slightly more relaxed this time. Still silent, still distant, but no longer shaking. He didn't speak. He just sat nearby, staring into the darkness, pretending not to notice how fast she ate. On the third day, she made a noise. Not quite a word, more like a gasp. Jonah's head turned instantly. She held the empty container in both hands, eyes downcast. And then, softly, so softly he thought he imagined it, came a word. "Thank." Jonah exhaled. "You're welcome." No more was said. But the wall between them, he felt, had cracked. By the 6th day, Jonah had given up trying to guess her species. Her features were subtly humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, bipedal gait. But her eyes, her posture, and the strange cadence of that single word, she didn't match any of the common profiles. He didn't press. Whatever she was, she didn't want to be found. And he wasn't about to be the one to ruin her chance at survival. That night, he left a thermal canister with tea and half a protein bar. He didn't wait. He simply placed it near the vent and walked off. The 7th day came without warning. Jonah had just gotten back to his quarters, barely bigger than a walk-in locker, when the knock hit the door like a sledgehammer. 3 thuds. Heavy. Purposeful. He froze. Nobody knocked like that on Concord unless they had authority. He opened the door. What stood there wasn't security. It wasn't a peace officer. It wasn't even from Earth. 7 towering figures loomed in the corridor, each clad in dark obsidian armor engraved with glowing sigils. Their helmets bore narrow slits of light across where eyes might have been. The air seemed to thrum around them, static dancing off the corridor walls. Jonah didn't speak. Couldn't. The lead figure stepped forward, voice echoing through a translator orb. "Jonah Vex," it said, tone devoid of emotion, "you have been summoned." Summoned? Jonah replied, his voice rough. "By who?" The orb vibrated. "By the Emperor of the Darnathi Empire." Jonah's throat tightened. He took a step back, instinctively reaching for the tool still hanging from his belt. The soldier didn't move. "You are not under arrest. You are under protection. You will come." "I didn't do anything." "You saved what others would discard. And for that," the voice said slowly, "a blood debt is owed." Behind the soldiers, a smaller figure emerged. It was her. The girl from the vent. Now standing, robes restored, her posture straight and composed. She bowed low. Then she spoke in perfect standard, "He fed me when I was lost. My life belongs to him now." Jonah blinked. The hallway spun around him. And from deep in the recesses of his memory, his years in war, in forgotten postings across the fringe, he recalled a phrase, one barely whispered among veterans who had once served near the Darnathi borders. "Save a royal, and the galaxy changes shape." Jonah Vex didn't pack. He didn't resist, either. The moment the girl bowed in the corridor, the moment those words left her mouth, "My life belongs to him now," he knew the world as he understood it had ended. Everything beyond that point was just momentum. The guards didn't bind him. They didn't shove or threaten. Instead, they moved around him with ceremonial precision, as if he were something sacred. Untouchable. It unnerved him more than if they'd pointed a rifle at his head. The corridor outside his quarters had gone silent. Neighbors watched from cracked doors, wide-eyed and pale. A Darnathi royal escort had never set foot on Concord Station before, certainly not on the maintenance levels. Jonah kept his voice low as he turned toward the girl. "What's your name?" She lifted her head. "Shyla Valoran." Jonah's pulse skipped. He didn't know the full registry of galactic nobility, but even he recognized the second name. "Valoran, you're the Emperor's blood. I am the heir." No pride. No vanity. Just a quiet, formal truth. Jonah rubbed the back of his neck, speaking to no one in particular. "I just gave her food." The nearest guard answered, monotone through his translator orb. "You gave her dignity." The shuttle was silent. Luxurious. Not built for comfort, built for reverence. Everything from the soft red lights to the absence of sound seemed engineered to make Jonah feel small. He sat alone on a cushioned bench while Shyla stood across from him, hands folded. She hadn't changed since the vent, still too thin, still too pale, but now her posture held weight. Authority cloaked her like a shadow. "You shouldn't have fed me," she said softly. "Didn't know I wasn't supposed to," Jonah replied. "Didn't know you were royalty either." "That's not what I meant." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You gonna explain what this is?" She nodded once. 7 cycles ago, there was a coup. My father, Emperor Valor, held power, but dissent grew within the noble houses. One faction sought to eliminate the line of succession. I was hidden, smuggled onto Concord Station under disguise. They killed everyone with my blood. Jonah exhaled through his nose. "But they missed you." "I hid too well. Lost my escorts. Ran. Starved." Her voice dipped. "Then you appeared. No questions. No price." Jonah's jaw tightened. You were a kid. Starving. On Darnath, she said, stepping closer, a noble cannot accept life without owing fealty. Especially from a lesser. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Lesser? I don't mean insult. It is the word for outsider. Non-blood. She knelt. Now the Empire is bound by an ancient law. If a royal life is saved freely, without knowledge of rank, the debt becomes sacred. Unbreakable. He looked away, unsure how to carry the weight of that statement. I don't want a throne. I don't want a ceremony. You don't have a choice anymore. Neither do they. The shuttle docked on the Darnathi Imperial carrier, an obsidian behemoth suspended in orbit above a pale green world. Jonah stepped onto its floor and felt it, not pressure, but reverence. Every soldier, every servant stopped what they were doing the moment they saw him. Not in fear. In recognition. He whispered to Shyla as they walked. Are they gonna kill me after the ceremony? No, she said. They're going to argue over who gets to honor you. He frowned. That sounds worse. The throne world was not what Jonah expected. No golden towers. No decadent courts. Darnath was raw, elemental, black stone structures carved into cliffs, white banners fluttering over valleys, and massive, quiet temples guarded by silent warriors. The imperial palace wasn't a building. It was a fortress wrapped around a mountain. Inside, everything echoed. Not because it was empty, but because it was old. Stone and silence. Tradition. Jonah walked down a long hall lit by hanging flames, each step flanked by guards in ceremonial armor. Shyla walked ahead of him, no longer hiding. The throne room doors opened with a hiss and groan. Jonah paused. The emperor stood at the far end of a vast hall, flanked by nobles, judges, generals, dozens of the galaxy's most powerful beings. His armor shimmered like volcanic glass. His eyes, when they met Jonah's, were not cruel, but weighed, unreadable. Shyla spoke first. I bring before you the human Jonah Vex. The janitor who gave me his food. Who did not ask my name. Who gave mercy freely. I invoke the law of bonded blood. The court gasped. Whispers followed. Jonah's voice cut through the noise. I didn't mean to get involved. He glanced at the emperor, I just saw a kid who needed food. Silence again. Then the emperor spoke. Do you understand what you have done, Jonah Vex? No, Jonah said honestly. But I'm starting to. You have invoked an ancient code. One that binds our house to yours. For a life freely saved, the empire must return an equal debt. Jonah swallowed. I didn't come for payment. The emperor stepped down from his dais. That is why you are worthy of it. Jonah glanced around. Dozens of eyes stared at him, some in awe, others in fury. What happens now? The emperor turned to the court. He shall be granted protection, title, and a voice in the high circle. By our law, he is now protector of the heir. A noble stepped forward in protest. He is a human. A laborer. He is the reason you still have an heir, the emperor replied coldly. Jonah raised a hand. Can I say something? The court quieted. I don't want a title. Don't want a seat. Don't want to play politics. I just want her safe. That's it. Whispers erupted. The emperor studied him, then nodded once. Then so be it. She is under your guardianship. As long as she lives, you are bound. Shyla stepped to Jonah's side. The emperor spoke one last time. Let it be known across the stars, the Darnathi bloodline endures, because of a janitor from Earth. Outside the palace, a silent crowd had gathered. As Jonah and Shyla emerged, word had already spread. No crown, no ceremony, no grand speech. Just a quiet man in work boots and a pale girl walking beside him, side by side. And from the cliffs above, the banners of Darnath unfurled, each now stitched with one new symbol. A broken mop, crossed by a flame. Jonah stood in the echoing chamber of the high circle. Not a throne room, not a courtroom, but something older. Circular walls rose around him like an arena, layered with obsidian benches carved into the rock. Each tier held a Darnathi noble, cloaked in tradition and ego. Their armor didn't shine, it absorbed light. Their eyes judged without blinking. Shyla stood at his side. Her voice had not trembled since the moment she named herself. He watched her face, calm, defiant, ancient. Only her hands betrayed her, they were clenched behind her back. Above them, seated on a high platform of sculpted stone, was Emperor Valor. He said nothing. The court had been gathered not to honor Jonah, but to decide if the law of bonded blood still held meaning. The eldest noble, Lord Vornrel, spoke first. His voice cracked with disdain. "This, human," he said, pausing as if the word stung, "is unworthy. Janitors do not sit among us. Dirt cannot wear a crown." Jonah raised a brow. "Didn't ask for your chair." Vornrel's eyes narrowed. "He mocks tradition." "No," Jonah said. "I mock snobs." Gasps rippled through the chamber. A female noble stood next. Her robe shimmered like oil. "He's dangerous. The people speak of him already. They say the Empire bends to him. That a man with no bloodline has earned more than we have in centuries." The Emperor remained still. Jonah finally turned toward him. "I didn't ask for this." "You fulfilled the law," Valor said. "And now we answer to it." Jonah's voice dropped. "Then answer with truth. You'd rather I walked away, wouldn't you?" Valor didn't respond. Shyla stepped forward. "He saved me. He gave without knowing who I was. You ask if he is worthy? I ask what makes you think you are." That silenced the room. One by one, nobles leaned back. Eyes dropped. No one argued with her. Valor rose. "In this court," he began, "laws matter more than pride. More than blood. When the code of our ancestors was written, it was not for Darnathi alone, it was for truth." He turned toward Jonah. "Do you understand why this matters, Jonah Vex?" Jonah shook his head. "No. But I understand her life matters. And I'd do it again." Shyla looked at him, something flickering in her expression, almost like warmth. The Emperor descended the steps, standing now level with Jonah. "You were not chosen. You were not born into privilege. But your action has echoed across the stars. I just gave her food." "That is why your story is dangerous," the Emperor said. "Because it is simple. Because every child, every worker, every discarded soul on every world will hear it and wonder, if a janitor from Earth can be remembered, why not them?" Jonah didn't smile. "Let them wonder." Valor turned back to the circle. "Then let it be recorded. Let the law stand. Let his name be written into the code of Valor. Jonah Vex, protector of the heir. Guardian of the Empire. Witness to our shame and our salvation." A seal burned into the floor beneath Jonah's feet, a circle of symbols, glowing gold. Not a crown. Not a weapon. A ring of hands, joined. When the ceremony ended, Jonah walked alone through the gardens of the palace. The stone paths were quiet, lined with alien trees that glowed faintly at the tips. There were no guards. No whispers. Just wind. Shyla found him near a fountain. He didn't look up. "You okay?" she asked. "No." She sat beside him. "You spoke well. I told the truth. I didn't know it would hurt them. That's why it worked." He looked at her now. "You think this changes anything?" "For some." He nodded slowly. "I just wanted to help. Not lead a revolution." "You didn't start one," she said. "But they'll start it, because of you." He leaned back. "I hate politics." She smiled. "That makes two of us." A long silence passed. "Do you know what happens now?" he asked. "You'll be assigned a delegation. Protection. A voice in the court. Jonah shook his head. I don't want any of that. I don't belong here. You belong where you're needed. He turned to her. Where do you want to go? Shyla stared out across the gardens. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can study, learn, prepare without being watched. I know a station, he said. Broken pipes, bad lighting. But nobody cares who you are. You'd like it. She smiled. Then take me there. 1 week later, the station's cargo shuttle docked quietly at Galactic Concord. No fanfare. No honor guard. Jonah stepped out first, toolbox in hand, uniform stained just like before. Behind him, Shyla walked without robe or crown. Just a hooded jacket and soft boots. No one looked twice. As they reached the lower decks, Jonah paused outside a storage room converted into sleeping quarters. It's not a palace. She smiled. It's better. Here's the rule, he said. You work, you eat, you sleep. You don't mention royalty, and you never bow to me again. She extended her hand. No bowing, she said. Just, thanks. He took it. No titles. No rituals. Just a janitor and a girl who once knelt in a vent. Epilogue. The tale spread. They called him the man who refused a throne. The protector without pride. On distant colonies, children recited his story. On dying worlds, people whispered his name when they fed the hungry or protected the weak. He never returned to court. But in the Empire's oldest temple, beside statues of warriors and kings, one sculpture stood apart. A man in work boots. Holding out a lunch box. And beneath it, written in Darnathy script. Mercy is the noblest rebellion. The janitor's story should have ended in silence. Back to cleaning corridors, tightening valves, and carrying trays of tools down forgotten halls. No medals. No ceremonies. No flame-lit rooms where ancient laws echoed from stone. But the galaxy was listening now. Not to the nobles. Not to the generals. But to the story that crossed stars faster than any ship. A human fed an alien child, and the Empire bowed in return. Jonah didn't change. He still reported to Maintenance Deck 6C. Still rolled up his sleeves when ducts backed up or coolant lines leaked. But around him, the air shifted. Aliens who once sneered now nodded when they passed. Children peeked from behind columns, whispering his name in reverent tones. Even the security staff, once indifferent, began greeting him with quiet respect. It made him uneasy. He hadn't wanted fame. He'd wanted her to live. In the months after the circle, Shyla vanished from the public record. Not in hiding, but in control. Jonah had helped secure her a small living space buried deep in the lower tiers of Concord Station. Officially, she was a junior researcher assigned to xenolinguistics. No guards. No attendants. Just a library of tablets and a view of the stars. He saw her often, but never as royalty. They met in mess halls. In broken walkways. In quiet corners of the station where no one bowed and no one remembered crowns. Studying again? Jonah asked one night, sitting across from her with a plate of steamed dumplings. She glanced up from her datapad. Ancient Terran philosophy. Your people have strange thinkers. He chuckled. We don't think, we improvise. You fight with words sometimes. And fists if that doesn't work. She paused. Do you miss Earth? He looked at the ceiling. Sometimes. Mostly the trees. And real coffee. Will you go back? Maybe someday. But not now. She tilted her head. Why not? He met her gaze. Because this place still needs fixing. One evening, Jonah found a message sealed under his door. Not a transmission. A letter, handwritten. Ink on textured parchment. No signature. Just a single line. They've begun erasing the law. If you care about truth, come to the Flame Temple. The Flame Temple was a Darnathy structure older than the palace itself, once used for sacred rites, now more museum than sanctuary. It hovered above the atmosphere of Veora Prime, orbiting like a relic forgotten in plain sight. Jonah didn't hesitate. He left the next morning without telling Shyla. The temple was cold. Not physically, but spiritually. The old fires had been extinguished. The walls bore carvings of warriors and oaths, of ancient laws written in the flowing script of the first Darnathy emperors. Jonah wandered through empty halls until he heard it, a voice. Low. Measured. Familiar. You were not supposed to matter this long. He turned. Lord Vornrel stood near the center of the chamber, robed in silver. Alone. Didn't think I did, Jonah replied. What are you doing here? I am cleaning, Vornrel said, walking slowly along the edge of the flame pit. Erasing mistakes. You were an error. Jonah's eyes narrowed. Feeding a starving girl was an error? She was never meant to live. The bloodline was scheduled to end. You interfered. Jonah stepped closer. Then try to finish the job. Let's see how that goes for you. The old noble chuckled. No. That would make you a martyr. And martyrs linger longer than kings. Then what? I am rewriting history. Quietly. The code will vanish. The tale will be retold as a fable. You'll be remembered as a fiction. Harmless. Jonah stepped into the center ring, directly above the extinguished flame well. You can bury a story, he said. But you can't kill the truth. Vornrel sneered. History is written by the victors. Jonah pulled a recording device from his pocket. And broadcasted by janitors with good timing. The noble froze. Jonah pressed a button. The device's light flicked on. Every word. Live stream. Station-wide. A beat of silence passed before the chamber filled with the echoes of shifting boots and rising voices. Then, from the shadows, Shyla stepped forward. You still underestimate the human, she said. Even now. Vornrel drew a ceremonial blade. Shyla didn't flinch. Jonah held her back. He's not worth it. The noble hissed. This isn't over. No, Shyla said. But you are. Vornrel disappeared into the dark without another word. Days later, the emperor issued a final decree. The law of bonded blood shall never be erased. It shall remain eternal. And beside it, a new edict was declared. No being, regardless of blood or birth, shall be denied honor earned by mercy. Jonah didn't attend the ceremony. He stayed on Concord Station, elbows deep in a broken pipe, while the galaxy celebrated laws he had forced them to remember. But he felt no pride. Just a quiet kind of peace. That night, as the stars glimmered beyond the viewport of Maintenance Deck 6C, Shyla joined him again. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she handed him a folded cloth. He opened it. Inside, a medal. Simple. Matte steel. Etched with the Darnathy crest overlaid with a human hand. He stared at it. I didn't do this for a medal. I know, she said. But symbols matter. Even to those who clean floors. He held the medal for a moment, then set it down beside his lunch box. She leaned against the bulkhead beside him. Are you staying? He asked. She smiled faintly. Until the pipes stop breaking. Then we've got time. Final note. The story of Jonah Vex did not end in books or monuments. It lived in the hands that shared food. In voices that rose when silence was expected. In the girl who would someday rule a star-spanning empire, and never forget the man who treated her like more than a title. And in the corners of the galaxy where janitors still walked, quietly changing everything.